And our next speaker is an attorney just like Mary, and she has been doing some really great work. You may recall a couple years ago we had a quarantine camp regulation where basically the governor would be allowed to throw anybody into a quarantine camp for any reason whatsoever, even if he's sick or what have you. And the person who killed that, the dragon slayer, Bobbie Cox, is with us today.
Thank you, John. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Bobbie.
Nice crowd. Awesome. So, yeah, my name's Bobbie Cox. I'm an attorney here in New York State. Been practicing for over 25 years. And as John just mentioned, a couple years ago, I sued New York State, Kathy Hochul, Department of Health, over their quarantine camp regulation. So everybody loves to ask me, what is the status of that? Because it kind of just disappeared from the public eye.
Yeah.
Well, we did successfully strike down that regulation, so it no longer exists today. However, because Kathy Hochul appealed that case, the appellate court, which is a panel of appointed judges, overturned our win, saying that my clients didn't have standing, which is not true. According to the highest New York State court case law, they do have standing. However, when we appealed to the Court of Appeals, which is the highest state court in New York, again, a panel of appointed judges, they would not hear the case. So, unfortunately, what that means is that although there is no quarantine camp regulation today, they can reissue that regulation if they want. So, because of the courts in New York, right now, if Kathy Hochul and the Department of Health want to reinstitute their quarantine camp regulation, they are free to do so. Another thing I want to just update you on, another large case that I did against New York State was the lawsuit against Prop 1. It's what the Democrats were calling the Equal Rights Amendment, but there was nothing equal about it. That was a huge propaganda push in order to put DEI into our New York State Constitution. And I did bring a lawsuit in 2024. Actually, we started in 2023. And we did win at the trial court level. We got Prop 1 removed from the ballot. However, again, Kathy Hochul appealed, and the appellate court, again, a panel of appointed judges, reversed our win. And that's why you saw Prop 1 on your ballot in November. Unfortunately, Prop 1 did pass by 56% of the vote. And so today we now have a constitution in New York State that says that, in essence, the effect is that boys can play in girls' sports, males have a constitutional right to use women's facilities, bathrooms, locker rooms, showers, dormitories. And it has opened the door to the radical politicians that control New York State to now start passing laws that are absolutely outrageous. One of the other things that Prop 1 did, besides give males the right to infringe on females' rights and privacy, is that it severely weakens parental rights. So there's language in Prop 1 that says that you can't, quote unquote, discriminate against someone based on their age, which is wonderful when you think about protecting our seniors. Of course, we want to protect our seniors. However, it doesn't say seniors, it says age, which means it goes the other direction as well, which means your children can have the rights of adults, and you, as the parents, will not have the ability to have a say in that. And let me give you some concrete examples of what we're seeing happen now that Prop 1 passed and is part of our Constitution. There was a lawsuit brought by parents because their 12-year-old child was being socially transitioned by the school district, right? The child went to public school, and at school said, well, I guess, I don't feel like I am the sex that I am. And the school started to socially transition the child, meaning they would call the child by the preferred pronouns that the child told them. This is a 12-year-old, guys. They would tell the teachers and the staff that they could use the name, not the given name, but the name that the child chose and whatnot. The parents had no idea what was going on at school. When they found out what was going on at school, they sued the school district. And what did the court do? The court ruled in favor of the school district. Okay? The court said, it's okay. You parents don't have the right to tell your child what to be and how to act and what to wear and who to be. Okay? They ruled in favor of the school. So basically, the court ruled in favor of the school against parental rights. We see another section of, well, let me just do this one last thing on the parental rights front. There is a bill that they've been trying to pass in Albany the past few years. And they reintroduced it now that Prop 1 has passed and is part of our Constitution. They reintroduced it this session. And they changed the name, which is really concerning because it means to me that they're getting ready to push this bill through, and they always wrap up their biggest lies in candy. So this bill was called, well, first let me tell you what they changed the name to. It's now called the the Student Safety and Health Act. Okay, so safety, we want to protect the students, right? What did they used to call it? The Comprehensive Sexuality Education Bill. So they only changed the name, they didn't change the words. What this bill is going to do if it passes is require all schools in New York State to teach all children, whether or not you the parents want them to, comprehensive sexuality education starting in kindergarten. So they are going to teach babies, 5-year-olds that still wet the bed at night about sex because they want to. Because they want to normalize it. And it's not just teaching them about sex, it's teaching them about sexuality, which means gender expression. It's teaching them about male and female parts. Age 5, guys, okay? Starting in kindergarten, and the law says it'll go straight up through 12th grade, and the law says it has to be an integral part of the education. And there is no opt-out for parents in that bill. So you as parents cannot opt out from having your babies learn about sex and sex education and sexuality and gender identity because of the radical politicians in Albany. Okay? That is a complete abolition of your parental rights. Parents get to decide when and how they teach their children about sex, not the government. One last thing I'm going to point out before I hand the mic over. Because Prop 1 passed, you also have an attack now on your religious beliefs. You know, the Democrats sold Prop 1 saying it was all about abortion. It was, oh, you have to protect your right to an abortion in New York State. That's what they sold it on. Read Prop 1, guys. The word abortion does not even appear in Prop 1. Okay? And I did a little homework when I was campaigning against Prop 1 last year. I looked at other states that were looking to amend their constitution to put in provisions that would safeguard the right to an abortion in their states. And do you know they all had the word abortion in there? Imagine that. So it was a complete gaslighting. That's what happened with Prop 1. And now you're going to see attacks on your religious freedoms too. Because Prop 1 says that you cannot discriminate. You, not the government, you can't discriminate against other people based on their race, religion, creed. That was already in there. But then they threw in 11 new categories. So what happened? I'll give one last example. There was a woman that was working for the state. She was working at a museum that was owned by the state, and they were doing the DEI gender training, requiring the employees to learn how to, call people by their preferred pronouns and whatnot. And this woman stood up and said, I can't do that. That is against my religious beliefs. I believe that there are only two sexes, male and female. God made us this way, that's it. And she got fired. So she hired a lawyer and she's suing the state because So, we see this coming out now in full force because Prop 1 passed in November. But we can change this. We can't pull Prop 1 out of the Constitution. That's not going to happen in New York State because of the process that you have to go through to alter our Constitution. However, we can fight back. And what we can do is we can vote them all out next year. We have a huge election in New York State. The governor is up for election. The attorney general is up for election. Every state senator is up for election. Every state assembly member is up for election. The comptroller is up for election. Everybody's up for election in New York State next year, November of 2026. And I am working with United New York State, which is one of my plaintiffs on my quarantine camp lawsuit. And we are doing voter registration drives around New York State because we need to increase our numbers. We need to get people to register to vote, and we need to come out in full force next November 2026 because we have the power to get rid of these politicians that are taking away our rights, harming our children, harming the family unit. We have the ability to get rid of them next year. We just need to increase our numbers at the polls. That's it. We have 19 million New Yorkers. In the last gubernatorial election, when Lee Zeldin ran against Kathy Hochul, only 5.5 million people voted, guys. 5.5 million people. That's it. And Lee Zeldin lost by 377,000 votes. So if we can increase our voter numbers, we can do that through registration drives, and we can get people who are already registered to vote to sign a pledge that they're going to vote next November 2026 and vote Kathy Hochul out. And vote We need a new governor, we need a new attorney general, we need new state senators and new state assembly members that believe in the Constitution and the power of we the people. So I have flyers here today. I'm going to hand them out after I speak. I hope everybody takes one. Just sign up. If you want to volunteer, please go to the website. There's a QR code. Sign up to get involved. If you know of any events where we can do voter registration drives, reach out to us. All the information is here. My information is on the back if you want to get in touch with me. Thank you all for coming. God bless you.
Thank you so much, Bobbie and Scott. Coming to the microphone now is someone, I don't know if you all know this, but she's one of the biggest supporters of Teachers for Choice, of Bravest for Choice, of all the fired workers who refuse to